In the news this week, Dean Nalder's ministerial career hangs in the balance over possible conflict of interest.
A WA family rallied for a change in insurance policy after their son paralysed through no fault of his own.
Plus a ride from hell as NASA tests his new Orion space capsule on Earth.
This is the Evening News with Ivan Leung and Danielle Staniskov.
Good evening. As Dean Nalder's possible conflict of interest saga continues to unfold, Premier Colin Barnett is yet to announce the fate of the beleaguered minister. Further questions are being asked about Mr Nalder's commercial interests. Darren McErlain begins our coverage.
WA Transport and Finance Minister Dean Nalder is facing further scrutiny after he met the Chinese Consul General for dinner with his property business partner from Meteor Asia. The West Australian newspaper stated on Monday, December 1, that Mr Nalder failed to disclose an investment of $400,000 in a property company. In response, the WA opposition leader Mark McGowan demanded the Premier to dismiss Dean Nalder.
The Premier needs to act, and he needs to act now. If he is going to have any standards in his government whatsoever, he should dismiss Mr Nalder today.
WA Premier Colin Barnett said he accepted Minister Nalder's apology over his error of judgment, but refused to answer whether Mr Nalder will be sacked over the incident.
As I've said previously, I think Dean is a very decent and an honest person. However, my responsibility as Premier is to ensure that his private financial interests do not compromise him in his ministerial duty.
Is it appropriate that Mr Nalder is involved in an investment with a man charged over the biggest financial scandal in world history?
Well, I don't know the details.
Do you know about Paul Dion Thompson?
I know the name. I don't know the details.
Are you aware that he's in an investment with Paul Dion Thompson?
Look, I am aware of what essentially has been reported.
Dean Nalder's potential conflict of interest saga unfolded after the press revealed that he and two other business partners owned a combined estimated share of 27% of the Fleet Network. The Fleet Network is responsible for arranging a novated vehicle lease to public servants. Darren McErlain, WAMN News.
Police are urging shop owners in Perth to look out for thieves who steal money from the till in broad daylight. The authorities are looking for an offender who've allegedly committed at least 7 crimes in 10 days.
It was a brazen crime committed in broad daylight. Thieves snatched money from hard-working restaurants and cafes in Perth's northern suburbs.
It's been happening since the 25th of November this year, and so far we believe there's 10 incidents that's happened, and it's in the metropolitan area.
It's believed the offender entered the shop, removed the till and left the store in a silver Honda Civic which was stolen in Torrent Hill last week.
It's very sneaky, but I think it's also cowardly as well. It's a cowardly action, you know. You've got these hard-working retailers here who are trying to make an honest living, and then you've got these people who are coming in and taking their hard earnings.
The offender is described as fair olive-skinned, slim-build, 180 centimeters tall and clean-shaven. He was wearing a hoodie with distinctive black and white short runners. Anyone with information on these incidents should contact Crime Stoppers. Marianne Candelora, WAMN News.
Car owners in Western Australia will face the possibility of forking out at least $80 extra to keep their cars on the road. The Premier revealed a plan to increase car rentals in an attempt to cut Perth's vehicle growth, but the opposition said it won't work.
These measures, if it's a flat fee on motor vehicles, will do nothing to reduce congestion. It is simply a tax to pay for his debt for projects like the gold-plated Burswood Stadium.
I mean, we're on a fixed income like most people of our vintage, and to have an increase like that on top of what we were getting before, it's a bit cruel.
The Proudlove family is fighting for a change in WA's third-party insurance compensation. The family's life was turned upside down after their son was paralysed in a car crash with no compensation. Mrs. Proudlove said the incident has exhausted the family's finances and they're calling for change in the policy.
I mean, we're struggling now to pay for Warwick's physiotherapies that aren't automatically covered by our government. You know, I think a lot of people might think that he'd be entitled to physio, to OTs, to speech pathologists as a matter of fact, but it's not that way at all.
The government has announced its 10-year vision to redevelop the Grayland Hospital in Mount Hawthorn. The plan will see the hospital closing in stages as local mental health services are provided. The draft has been released for consultation and forums will be held until March of 2015.
Graylands is an outdated, institutionalised, old lunatic asylum. That's what it was built for, and that's what it still is in terms of its fabric. There is no excuse in this day and age for us to be providing mental health services in a facility like this.
In world news, the Australian government's amendment to the Migration Act narrowly passed through the lower house on Friday after a fierce debate. Under the change, temporary protection visas will allow refugees to stay in Australia for 3 years without permanent residency. The federal government hoped that this change will clear the backlogging of 30,000 asylum seekers who arrived in Australia by boat. NASA has launched its new space capsule as a first step of sending humans to Mars. After launching the unmanned capsule from Florida, it dived into the atmosphere and landed on the Pacific Ocean near the southern coast of California. 11 parachutes were used to slow down the capsule, diving at 32,000 kilometers per hour. The component has been sent back to NASA for analysis.
That's heck of a ride, Danny.
Just like this year?
It is. If you're on board at WAM News, you know what I'm talking about. And for more news, you can always check our website.
Thanks for your company. We look forward to seeing you next year in 2015.
On behalf of the news team, Merry Christmas and good night.
Good night.